afternoon, everyone. My name is Talia Dekel, and I'm CEO of the Jerusalem Press Club, welcoming you all the way from Israel, introducing journalists around the world to the incredible landscape of Israeli climate change innovations. This program kicks off JPC's Climate Solutions Israel Fellowship, scheduled for March 2024. More information on that soon. Israel is home to groundbreaking advancements in renewable energy, water, conservation, green construction, sustainable agriculture, and food tech. Over the years, Israelis have fostered a culture of innovation spearheaded by countless talented individuals who are leading the way in developing and implementing solutions that are reshaping the future of climate change mitigation and sustainability on a global scale. Just this morning, we woke up to news of a joint Israeli-American initiative on advanced tech solutions to achieve food security across the Middle East and Africa, including a $35 million investment over 5 years. Meanwhile, the Israel Innovation Authority announced the launch of a $10 million fund for innovative human capital programs aimed at fostering expertise in a number of fields, among them clean tech and food tech. So with all that's going on, it's more than fitting to begin our series with a mapping of the current trends in Israel with two of the country's leading professionals in the field. John Medved is founder and CEO of Our Crowd, a global investing platform connecting accredited investors to startups in various industries, including clean tech, food tech, and other climate solutions and innovative technologies, both in Israel and around the world. Since 2013, Our Crowd has been driven by the idea that the business of building startups grows bigger and better when the global crowd gains access to VC-level investment opportunities. As the most active venture investor in Israel, Our Crowd vets and selects companies, invests its capital, and provides its global network with unparalleled access to co-invest and contribute connections, talent, and deal flow. Dr. Tareq Abu Hamed is the executive director of the Arava Institute, one of the leading environmental studies and research institutions in the Middle East. In the Arava Desert, Dr. Abu Hamed established the Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation at the Arava Institute in 2008, and before returning to lead the organization, was the Israeli Ministry of Science's Deputy Chief Scientist and Acting Chief Scientist. The Institute houses academic programs, research centers, and international cooperation initiatives, focusing on a range of environmental concerns and challenges, with the student body comprising of Jordanians, Palestinians, Israelis, and participants from around the world. The Arava Institute offers students an opportunity to learn from leading professionals. So Mr. Medved and Dr. Hamed will each give a short presentation before we move on to some Q&A. So without further ado, let's begin, if we can, with Mr. Medved.
Thank you so much, Talia, and welcome to this, I think, very important event. I'm going to try to share some slides here and see if this works. There we go. So look, Israel is called upon to provide leadership in climate tech. Just before this government, prior Prime Minister Naftali Bennett went to COP in Edinburgh, made very, very strong statements about how Israel is going to, provide leadership. Our president just yesterday signed this deal in the US with Vice President Kamala Harris. It's getting a lot of attention. We're very committed at Our Crowd to this area. We have actually 70 portfolio companies when you look at the broad range of areas that really fall in this important sector. And we've invested close to $350 million, which represents about 15% plus of our $2.2 billion portfolio. So we're quite committed in this area. I think it's important when you talk about this to look at where the greenhouse gas problem is coming from. And this is actually an interesting slide if it's visible here. And I think most people would think that it's all coming from fossil fuels and energy, transportation. That's not necessarily true. Huge amounts of the greenhouse gas problem is coming from the agro-food area in terms of being able to, produce food and bring it, to your plate. This is, extraordinarily important. things like cement generate 7% of greenhouse gases, and toxic algae, which you'll hear, is responsible for about 7%. So it's very, very diversified. And if you're going to attack it, you've got to attack, these areas as a group. Look, I'm going to start with a company that really isn't an Israeli company, but we're invested. And it's sort of appropriate about how companies today really need to step up. And if somebody else could do the admission, I was made a administrator, and I'm having to admit people right and left. You're getting a good turnout, Talia, which is nice.
I'm doing it. No worries.
Okay, good. So it turns out that 26 million acres of Canadian forest have been burning over the last several weeks. It's historic. And yet we've invested in a company just about 6 months ago that has a solution to reforest by literally shooting pellets from a drone, because there's no way that these 10 billion trees, you don't have enough people on the planet to dig enough holes and to create that forest again. Technology solutions have to come to the rescue. The smoke that came from that was being mitigated inside buildings by another company of ours, this time, yes, an Israeli company called Medved, who clean up indoor air. There's a company I love to talk about called Blue-Green Water Technologies. These are people who clean up what looks like scum on lakes or rivers or even in the ocean. They called it in Turkey sea snot recently. And it turns out that because of global warming, phosphate runoff, lack of oxygen in general, this algae is proliferating like crazy. It's toxic. It kills the water, kills the fish, the life, and it's responsible by producing methane for estimates are claiming 7% of the total greenhouse gas that we're facing. And an Israeli company called Blue Green has figured out a way in an EPA safe method within literally a day or two to completely eradicate this from bodies of water, to cause it to go into mass suicide, and then it sinks to the ground. And what makes climate investing so interesting is not only is this company now making villagers around these lakes, for example, Situmo Lake in South Africa, dance for joy because their lake is now clean and the fish are back. But guess what? We make a ton of money on carbon credits because that toxic algae sinks to the bottom and is sequestered. So you now have a situation where you really have a triple bottom line, where you're making money, you're cleaning up water, and you're cleaning the air. And that's sort of a trifecta in the climate world. In Verid, we spoke about, we're co-invested there with Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. They really are using technology that comes from the space station where they know how to filter carbon dioxide. And this is now cleaning up air inside buildings. H2 Pro is a very interesting company here in Israel, which is essentially providing green hydrogen. Their goal is to get it for $1 a kilo. The founder and CEO was an internet entrepreneur. As the case may be, he shifted from the internet into energy and is doing incredible work. We talked about Flash Forest. Empress, another interesting example of an Israeli company which grew up in the defense sector, providing the software that actually powers Israel's Iron Dome anti-missile system. And now they are actually providing advanced DERMS, or distributed energy resource management software, to manage grids, not just here in Israel, but around the world. This is a way to save up to 20% of energy. And then finally, in the really important area of fusion technology, we're invested recently in a very interesting Israeli startup called NT Tau, who are making small fusion reactors for corporations, hospitals, large buildings. I mean, we're not there yet. It's going to take some time, but it's exciting. And we're very, very proud to be really leading this charge in the country. 1 in 7 of Israeli startups now, according to Planet Tech, are in the climate arena, and we're expecting to do a lot more. We're just getting started. Thank you, Talia.
Thank you. So far, it all sounds very, very, very good. So we're waiting for the Q&A to find out, what exactly is going on. But before that, we'll let Dr. Abu Hamed take the floor.
Okay, the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies is located in southern Israel. We are an academic and research institution that tries to advance cross-border environmental cooperation between Israel and its neighbors. And why do we do that? Because the Eastern Mediterranean and also the Middle East is considered as a hotspot when it comes to climate change. We know that the increase in the air temperature in our region is beyond the global average. The temperature in the Eastern Mediterranean also is higher than the global average, the acidity of the sea. And we all know that to deal with climate change, you need regional and international cooperation. You cannot deal with the climate change alone. And this is what we try to do, and we managed to do at the Arava Institute, to bring partners together. And when it comes to the Middle East, we have plenty of peace treaties. As you know, Israel has a peace treaty with Egypt, with Jordan, and now with the Abraham Accords, a kind of treaty with the Palestinians. We don't lack peace treaties. And we also don't lack, as also John mentioned, the technology or the natural resources. In this area of the world, we have plenty of solar radiation that we can utilize to produce our electricity, to use it for desalination, and also to produce the water that we need for our food production. This region doesn't lack these natural resources or technology. The region lacks trust. And because of the lack of trust in this region, regional corporations become a challenge. And this is what we do at the Arava Institute. We bring people together from the whole region. As you mentioned, Talia, at the beginning, we bring Palestinians, Jordanians, Moroccans, Emiratis, Sudanese to Israel to study and to learn these technologies. We build partnerships that are based on trust. We bring people together, giving them the opportunity to know the other, to see the human in the other, and to establish these partnerships. And we do that through academic programs, through research. Today, I just took a look to the news, and in the major news networks, you see in the major pages, in the front page, in news about the extreme weather conditions that we have in the region and also in the world: floods, heat waves, climate refugees, the transportation sector, the public health. Tens of thousands of people are dying in Europe because of the heat waves. And in order to deal with these things, you have to give people the opportunity to learn about climate change, mitigation, and adaptation. And as flooding, heat waves, and wildfires, I think intensify across the globe, not only this region. Extreme weather events ignites the need for climate action. And in order to do that action in a proper way, you have to build a trust between your neighbors. Climate change is not only an environmental threat. No, it's also a first-degree security threat. It will cause the refugees not only in this region, but also around the world. And as I said, we have to build trust between the partners. We do that through our academic program, where we bring Palestinians from the whole Middle East region. They come to Israel into a university-level program. They live 24/7 with each other for 3 to 4 months at the Arava Institute in the southern of Israel. And during this academic program, they have the opportunity to learn these technologies, to build partnerships, to build trust, and they become partners. And we have in the Middle East close to 2,000 alumni, 2,000 ambassadors of environment, ambassadors of Israel, ambassadors of the climate, and most of them start companies, startups, non-governmental organizations that deal with the environmental challenges of the region. And we also do that through our research and development center. We have the Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation. We have Transboundary Water Management, Sustainable Agriculture, Center of Arid Social Ecology. And in all of these centers, we do basic research, applied research and development with our partners in the region. We focus on transboundary environmental challenges. And we use environment and environmental studies as a diplomacy tool to connect between people, to use the global language of environment, the climate threat, to find the common interest and to build trust. We also at the Arava Institute, and you see the southern parts of Israel in the right picture in the map. We are 30 miles, like 50 kilometers from Aqaba, Jordan. We are 32 miles from Egypt, probably 35 miles from Saudi Arabia, and we are half an hour from Tel Aviv. And we have 26 years of experience in regional cooperation. That's why we decided to establish the Regional Climate Change Policy and Research Center. This will be a regional hub for all researchers from the Middle East and North Africa to come, create policies, design policies, do research to deal with the climate threats that we have in the region. We also do projects on the ground, not only in Israel. We do that also in the most complicated areas in the world, in Gaza. Gaza suffers from the lack of electricity, the lack of fresh water. And the Arava Institute managed to send into Gaza many Israeli technologies, and one of them is WaterGen. Our role there was to facilitate between the Israeli authorities and our partners in Gaza, facilitated that with the authorities in Gaza. And we do that in full coordination with the Israeli army and the Israeli security. And these systems produce drinking water from air, and all of them are installed in hospitals, universities, and clinics. So the exposure to this technology is huge among the universities and clinics in Gaza. We also managed to send into Gaza Strip an off-grid wastewater treatment plant that treats the wastewater of certain villages in Gaza and solves the huge environmental challenge in Gaza. That's also transboundary environmental challenge. The pollution doesn't stay in Gaza. They dump the wastewater into the Mediterranean, and that travels into Ashkelon, which is the home of one of the largest desalination plants in the world, or it infiltrates into the shared aquifer between Israel and Gaza. So it's transboundary environmental challenge. Doesn't stay inside Gaza Strip, and these photos are from Gaza. We also develop technologies that deal with wastewater, energy, water desalination, off-grid technologies, but also high-tech at the same time. The system that you see here is called Laguna Tech. It's an off-grid wastewater treatment system that treats the wastewater for a home or a school or a village without producing any sludge. And the treated wastewater is used by the villagers or by any village in the developing world for agriculture. So that means we use technology, use renewable energy resources to deal with environmental challenges that are faced. When we talk about the developing world, when we talk about the West Bank or Gaza or a city in Amman, most of these cities and villages are not connected to the sewage network. So what happens to the sewage? It infiltrates into the shared aquifer. These are photos from a school in Nablus that the Arava Institute, the Israeli organization, managed to establish in the West Bank, and that shows the trust that I talked about. Our Jewish Israeli team goes to the West Bank in the villages and install these technologies. Another example in the Jordan Valley with the Palestinian farmers about the off-grid desalination to help farmers have high quality water to improve their crops. We do also international cooperation with the prestigious universities like Oxford, where we develop a model to look at the natural resources of this region, how these natural resources look like in 2030 and 2050 under two scenarios. One is if each country plan these natural resources alone, or when they plan them together, what are the added value of planning these natural resources like the water, energy, food nexus together. And one great example that helps people to mitigate and adapt to climate change, it's a joint project that we have with the University of Arizona and with the support of the JNF. It's the CASA Joint Institute for Global Food, Water, and Energy Security, where we use the land twice for agriculture and also for electricity production. So electricity becomes another crop for the farmers, and this electricity can be sold to the grid or can be used to pump water, desalinate water, or maybe used for cooling systems to help farmers store their crops for longer periods. I will stop here, and I'm looking forward to receiving questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Tareq. John, Dr. Abu Hamed spoke a lot about climate diplomacy through the means of, joint research and even executing projects on the ground. Are you finding that in the business world there is, a similar thirst or desire to invest in cooperative initiatives of these kinds?
The answer is absolutely. We're very active in the region with staff people on the ground in both the UAE and in Morocco, and inshallah, in not too distant future, even in Saudi Arabia. We believe very much in what Tareq is really leading the way, and I want to, congratulate and express my admiration for the exceptional work that you guys are doing at the Arava Institute. And this is for you journalists here, this is a story which just is not getting the attention it deserves. And I appreciate the JPC and this initiative for, highlighting this. In the corporate world, when you talk about this, you're talking about huge industries. So, for example, food and agriculture is a monster industry. And if you look at the Gulf, they have tons of money. They are very advanced economies and almost zero food security. They are at such huge food risk because of the fact that they don't grow and they are dependent totally on the supply chain, which we can see in the past couple of years can be quite fickle. So the interest in advancing, vertical agriculture and next generation water technologies. I mean, Israel has an enormous set of advantages in the climate area. And it starts with a track record, right? There's nowhere in the world where you know how to handle water, everything about water, whether it's desal or irrigation or water storage or safety, or even water intelligence. We have a company called Cando, which is providing incredible, AI-driven insights into water that's wastewater and whatnot. So water is great, but it's not just water. Israel, has often been a pioneer in the renewable energy area. One of the largest Israeli companies at the moment is SolarEdge, who do a great job in terms of, really providing advanced technology for the solar industry. You look at Israel's emerging strength as a food tech power. We're number 2 in the world in terms of invested dollars in alternative protein, right after the United States. We invest more money in alternative protein in Israel than the entire continent of Europe, okay? And so there's a lot here for people to work with. And I completely buy into this notion that this is the bridge to peace, because people are going to act on their own benefit. They want to do things for their own people, for their region, for their families, for their nations. And now all you have to do is wake up in the morning, watch the TV, open the paper. If people don't get religion about climate today, then they are asleep. Okay, it is simply, this is not a coincidence. This is not some kind of, different sort of temporal change. We are we are seeing this dystopian future emerge in front of our eyes. And yet it's tractable. We can deal with it. It's going to require technology breakthroughs. And it's not just about more ESG funding to build more solar farms or more wind farms, which we need. But it's about creating the technology breakthroughs in fusion and in hydrogen and in water handling and in food production that will actually provide ammunition to the countries and the people who want to deploy these solutions. And this is what's missing, by the way, is more funding for these, critical breakthroughs.
Okay, thank you. I hate to, move the discussion towards politics, but there is a question. It's a bit long, so bear with me, and I think I can give it to both of you to answer each in your own field. Israeli climate technology sits at the crossroads of several important dynamics. Climate polls as a higher priority for American Jews than Israel. American progressives see the startup nation as cover for criticism about the neglect of the two-state solution and ongoing alleged occupation. Republicans are protective of Israel, but also of fossil fuel. the US battle for technological supremacy over China would seem to urge us to demand that Israel, by us, I mean the Americans, to demand that Israel unambiguously favor the US in that global battle, given the decisive role of the US support in guaranteeing Israel's safety over so many years. If the speakers center their priority on climate innovation to save the planet, how do you parse these many complicated issues vis-a-vis Israel and the American partnership, which of course is, this week more interesting than ever? Let's start with Tareq after we heard John.
Okay, as I said, the climate is a great diplomacy tool, really, to bring people together, and this plays actually also a significant tool to bring politicians together in this aspect. And this is what we do at the Arava Institute, through the research that we do, through the Track 2 Environmental Forum, where people, community leaders, and also politicians meet to discuss the climate issues. The question also touches upon the two-state solution and the occupation. And look, one of the major challenges that we have here in this region is the disconnection between people. And the disconnection is the greatest threat. And climate, technology, green tech, water tech is the tool, is the language that we need to use to bring people together in this region, to reconnect the people. One country alone cannot deal with climate change. One country alone cannot solve the region's environmental challenges. The technologies that John just mentioned, these are the tools. These are the common interests that people need in this region. The climate that we have today is tomorrow's climate of Europe, and the technology that is developed here is the diplomacy tool that will serve the whole world. Through environmental diplomacy, you bring people together, you give them the opportunity to know the other, and then you build the trust. And once you build trust, the rest becomes just technicality.
John?
Talia, I reject attempts to politicize climate. Okay, in other words, I think that's one of the great dangers that, like Tareq, I believe that climate should bring people together. I think it should bring countries together. I strongly endorse what he said in terms of, that simply by working on projects together, progress is made. Okay, and progress is being made. And if Israelis and Arabs can get together on climate, guess what? Democrats and Republicans, Likudnikim and protesters, everybody should be able. The world is burning. Literally burning in front of our eyes. And we're going to make this a political issue. Okay. In other words, it should be, if you're not taking action, yes. Okay. But it can't be made partisan. Okay. It's got to be a broad front of people moving together. And look, I have a vested interest in this because I run an investment platform. And as the great Michael Jordan said once when he was asked by a fellow Democrat to endorse him for his run for Senate, he said, Republicans buy sneakers too. So the reality is that I have investors who come to our platform from all over the world, where they come from all over the Gulf and the Arab world, the Middle East region. They come from China. I had a delegation of very high-profile Chinese in my office today. We are about half of our money is sourced from North America. You can tell by my accent that I probably grew up somewhere in North America. I did in California. But the reality is that we have to all work together on this, okay? And we have to invest in it, and to sort of belittle it by making it, partisan is something that I'm not going to take part in.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you very much. I think you mentioned the heat, or even if you didn't, it's maybe because I am sweltering. Tareq, you're located in a desert-based institution, located in the middle of a regional hotspot. I know that you talked a little bit about you touched on some of the initiatives, but how do you think as a whole desertification will impact the Middle East and all these other nations that we seem to be doing partnerships with?
Look, it's happening. Desertification is here. not only in the Middle East, we see it in North America, we see it in Europe. And the only way to fight this phenomena is by climate change mitigation and adaptation, and to develop the right technologies and help people to learn how to use these technologies to prevent desertification, on how to recycle water, how to create technologies that will actually help crops to deal with the harsh conditions of the desert. We are in the Arava, which is a hyper-arid region, which means we receive very high solar radiation, very little of rain, but we manage to do agriculture by agri-photovoltaics, by irrigation, by smart agriculture, by technology from waste into energy. And again, as I said, what we develop here in Israel will be not tomorrow's, maybe just next morning's technology for Europe. It's not only for the desert regions. It's the future. And again, I started with showing some shots from the news. This is what's happening today. It's not only in the Middle East. It's everywhere. We expect millions, tens of millions of refugees if we continue business as usual. That's what I said. It's a security matter. It's not only an environmental challenge. Yeah.
That's very clear. You both talked a lot about the need to invest in the technologies themselves. Have you been making, these? I'm not sure if it's diverting funds, but have you communicated this need specifically to, partners who are decision makers or otherwise, or are we just talking about it among ourselves?
Look, we're sitting in a situation where the investment in climate tech companies and venture capital globally has gone up considerably in the last couple of years. And if you look at, there's a group called Holon IQ, who just released a study that showed that last year in 22, there was 70 billion invested globally in climate startups. Again, broadly speaking, including food and mobility and energy and water, et cetera. And that was up 89% from 21. Israel, as I mentioned before, 1 in 7 are climate startups. So it sounds like we're doing great, right? Wrong. The reality is that this is a drop in the bucket. This is not real money. When you talk about a situation where there's 30 or 40 trillion dollars in ESG money, and now there's 70 million going into breakthrough technologies, that's not even 1% of the money. That's a 0.25% of the money raised, ostensibly to change the world for the better. And there seems to be an ongoing problem, both in the venture capital community and beyond, that, climate, it's nice to talk about it. The companies are going to depend on subsidies. They're not real. They're not going to make profit. And they're simply wrong, because today a company that has a solution for reforestation is going to make money, okay? And people are going to take it with open arms. Companies that can grow food vertically and save 95% of the water usage, they're going to make money. And therefore, we need to be investing, in my opinion, literally an order of magnitude more capital now, today, to fund these companies. So I can speak about this deforestation company. They're now very proud of the fact that they're producing 300,000 tree pellets a day. But if you do the arithmetic, to have enough of these to actually just reforest what was lost in Canada, it will take years and years. They can't do it. We need to put more money to work now, not in 10 years from now. And the money is there. Okay, in private individual hands, there's $100 trillion of investable assets. Okay, and it's just not reaching these critical areas. So I think that It's a problem that we have to mobilize people. We have to mobilize them not just to invest, but to provide their energies to help these companies get the word out and to thrive. And that's going to be a big part of the solution.
Okay, we have a few. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me add that the Arava Institute doesn't do only bottom-up approaches. We also work top-down. We involve the governments in the region. We have partners from the governments in the region, from Jordan, Israel, Palestine, and they all know that the only way to cope with climate change is to change the way we live, the way that we produce our food, we produce our energy, we design our transportation, we produce the water that we need for the agriculture and the food production, and that's the only way. It's a combination between bottom up and top down approach with small projects and also large policy that is needed to have these projects on the ground.
Okay, thank you. We have a few questions on some of the initiatives themselves and some of the companies, so I'll just get right ahead. Is H2Pro planning on using the recent technology developed by Tel Aviv University in their green hydrogen production that was recently discovered to have 90% production efficiency with renewable energy to help bring down the cost of green hydrogen and to enable it to achieve economies of scale?
I noticed that news from this week with great interest, and I've got a call scheduled with Talmon, who is the head of H2Pro, to understand better its importance for the company. There's a huge amount of activity going on in hydrogen. I think it's very, very promising. I think it's not one of these technologies which we'll only be able to use in 20 or 30 years. I think it's going to come this decade. And it's the news that came out of Tel Aviv University was stunning. And I'm hoping that this will find a way to market.
Okay, we have another question on Israel's recycled materials market and whether we've developed it as we should have over the past years.
We are terrible at recycling. We are the worst. We need to import a lot of Japanese leadership, okay, because they're pretty good at it, and a lot of other countries in Europe. I mean, the kind of behavior we have, people would be arrested for, in Switzerland or modern countries. I mean, go search for an orange recycling bin. Good luck with that. Okay, in my opinion, we're good at developing some of these solutions, but the sandler's, the shoemaker's kid is running around barefoot. Okay, and we're not using them. I mean, Tareq, why don't you comment on that?
Yeah, actually, we are terrible. However, everything starts with education. And this is what we do at the Arava Institute. And this is what our alumni do when they go back into their communities and in Jordan, in West Bank, in Gaza, and also within Israel. There are a lot of startups and non-governmental organizations that work in increasing the awareness on these in these issues, and we see a lot of successful initiatives in Israel, in the West Bank, in Jordan regarding to recycling and renewable energy and environmental awareness.
So we've established that we have a little bit of work to do at home, but how has Israel, in any case, developed the market itself, at least for overseas partners or the rest of the world, if you can comment on that?
There are amazing companies like UBQ, which we've not yet invested in, who are taking, materials and turning them into, very, very useful recycled materials. There are companies like Tipa, who are creating, also not one of our investments, who are creating plastic bags that are fully, compostable and disintegrate, but actually work pretty darn well. And I think that there is when you talk about materials and deep tech, Israel is good. In other words, one of the problems with environmental investing is that the problems are not simple. It's not like a software company where you get a couple of brilliant breakthroughs and within a couple of months you have a prototype. If you look at, how quickly, for example, Threads broke out. I think it had 100 million users in 3 days. Okay, that doesn't happen in the environmental world. We have deep tech that requires lots of money requires regulatory approval, new materials, semiconductors, like, tackle green cement or green steel, companies that we do have investments in. These are huge breakthroughs. So one of the problems is that you must have significant money to invest, and you must also have patience. Now, Israelis are not known for their patience. Okay, that's, tact, no; patience, no. Okay, but innovation, yes. And if we get more partnerships with people who are good at long-term planning, at scale up, at providing massive funding, I think many of these companies can get out there and actually change the world.
Okay, thank you. What is the status of the Israeli-Jordanian MOU to exchange water for solar signed at the Egypt COP last year? Can we expect similar agreements coming out of the UAE?
Yeah, what I know about that project still in the process. Nothing yet on the ground. It's funded by the United Arab Emirates. It's a great idea, a great project. However, in order to prevent the rejection of the public for such projects, you have to work with the people on the ground. You have to build the trust. We saw how the Jordanian public was against the gas treaty with Israel and other also large-scale projects like this one. It's an important project, but it should be based on trust. I said that there's a lot of peace treaties, but really, is there a peace in this region? Peace between the people? I don't think so. And trust is needed. It can be done and expanded to other parts of the world. I think it can be if you build it in the right way by building trust between the people of the region.
I mean, this highlights another rather unique element of investment in this area, which is it requires permitting and licensing. I mean, we had a company that has a great technology in milk production without cows, using fermentation, and it's very exciting. Except when they found out how long it would take to build that factory in Israel, and they had the money, and the government and people came back and said, "Yeah, it'll take us 3 or 4 years to get this permitted," and they expected we would applaud. Okay, because 3 or 4 years to get a permit and license in Israel to build anything, of a big nature, that's amazing. Okay, but the reality is that and that's, by the way, why people in the Gulf who can get these things done quicker, when they decide to move, actually they move really quick. This, I think, offers really interesting opportunities for Israeli entrepreneurs, because you can develop the technology here and stand it up even quicker with capital and with access to other markets in places like, the UAE and whatnot.
It sounds like a lot of where our conversation is going ultimately, comes down to time and, the urgency of everything, and the fact that, on the other hand, we don't have the patience for long-term processes. The next question has a lot to do with that. Someone is asking if we can fundamentally change the way society functions, which I think ties into Tareq's, work on education. But this is something, much more deeply rooted. And it's not just in Israel. If we talk about Uber Eats as an example of something that creates high carbon emitters. So can social change really reduce the carbon footprint, or is this really, beyond our ability?
I'll let Tareq talk about the education part, but part of this is the conundrum of Bill Gates, who was an extraordinary climate activist, spending a ton of his fortune thinking very deeply about this, flying in his private jet to COP. Okay, and that's the reality. Okay, we're in a world which is a little bit strange, and what we need to do now is to find workarounds. So, for example, trying to convince people stop ordering food and getting it delivered Not going to happen. Too many people are completely addicted to that. However, are there better solutions than these suicidal delivery people, burning fossil fuels and terrible, emissions from these bikes and motorcycles all over the world? The answer is yes. It's called drones. Okay. And there are several Israeli companies in particular that are pioneering drone delivery, where actually it'll be cheaper, it's robotic, it's safer. We have a company here which is doing this Flytrex in the US with huge companies, of the biggest size, where they're already trialing drone delivery. So there, education can work, but it can only go so far. Technology has to play a role.
Tareq?
Yeah, look, unless we have the environment and climate science as a significant part of the educational curriculum, we will not be able to see a major change. And this is what the Arava Institute is trying to do. We work with schools around the region. We work with communities around the region, communities that are from the developed world and also the developing world, to give them the right tools, the right education, that they help them to have the change that we look for, to ways and to reduce the water, to reduce the solid waste, to recycle the waste. And the best ways to actually produce energy is to convert the waste into energy. And this is what is needed in many areas around the developing world, in the region here and also in the rest of the globe.
Okay, a question on Bridgetown 2.0 initiatives. Do you think that these initiatives to increase climate investment in the global south is a feasible way to foster the climate change resilience and mitigation technology developments worldwide and get to the levels of investment we need to combat worldwide climate change? Any takers?
Don't know enough about the initiative, believe it or not.
Okay, that's fair. And forgive me if this has already been answered, but an opinion on whether carbon emission reabsorption is the way to go as a solution.
Look, it's the carbon sequestration is technology that's used today, but in my eyes, it's like sweeping the dirt underneath the carpet. It's exactly the way to go, again, is to change the way we live. We rely on the natural resources, the sun, the wind, the energy of the water. We cannot continue business as usual. Guys, look to what's happening, and it will be worse. This will actually becomes more and more intense. It impacts the public health. Last year, just 2022, 62,000 people were killed died in Europe because of the heat waves. And we need to adapt. We need to change the way we live, the way we produce our food, our water, our energy, our transportation. That's the way to go. The natural resources we have, the technology we have, we just need the political will in order to change the way we live.
Okay, we have time for one or two more questions. John, did you want to add anything to that?
No, look, I think we have to use all of our resources. And I totally agree with Tareq that the primary and long-term solution is don't emit, okay? Stop emitting, except that we have to try to fix what's already wrong. There's too much carbon already in the atmosphere, and we can't wait, okay, to watch it dissipate. We have to stop making it worse, but we do need to find ways to clean it up. And I've seen some there's a company here in this country, we're not invested, but it seems interesting, called High Hopes. I don't know if you've seen that, Tareq. They're launching balloons with like a refrigerator inside. They fill it up with carbon. It freezes at a high altitude, and then they somehow safely bring it down to Earth from, tens of thousands of feet. You have to watch out that you're not under that refrigerator. But there are going to be all kinds of wild and interesting ideas coming forward. We need to really empower, fund, and enable people to come up with wacky and wild ideas, because some of them are actually probably going to work. And while we have to stop the meeting, we got to figure out a way to clean up the mess.
Okay, just I think a final question before we run out of time. You talked a lot about the numbers themselves and all the wonderful initiatives and innovations. Somebody's asking that what Israel's competitive advantage in climate tech is. I mean, why not invest the same things in other countries that may be doing just as brilliant things?
Well, I think it's simple, and I would love to hear Tareq's comments, but there are three things. One, Israel is good at innovation in every area. Literally, it's very hard to find an area where we're not doing very, very well. We're very innovative. We're called Startup Nation for a reason. It's not a tech washing thing. It's reality. And therefore, Israel is good. Number two, we live in a resource-constrained environment. We live in the hot part of the world without water. Okay, 100 years ago, Israel had very little tree cover. Okay, all of this, enabled us to do more with less. Okay, where we started with. And number three, climate tech requires multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary technology, meaning you can't just be a software expert. You got to understand embedded technology, semiconductors, sensors. You've got to understand materials. You've got to understand agriculture. And by putting all these things together, this is actually stuff that Israel does very well. Israel does medical devices well because we are inherently multidisciplinary. And you'll see people like Talman Marco, who's running H2 Pro, coming out of the internet area and reinventing himself. And so I think those kinds of characteristics will continue to power Israel ahead. Tareq?
Look, I think the major drive here is that the Israelis like to take risk, like to gamble, and that's how you succeed. You don't give up, and being also a kind of isolated country in this region also plays a significant role in the development of the startup sector in the region. You have to find the solutions by your own for your needs. But again, it's also a culture that we see that it's just crossing the border for the West Bank, for Gazans, for Jordanians, that they also try to adopt this kind of culture, and this is also a great opportunity. People see Israel as a startup nation, and they want to come here and learn. And one of the programs that actually we do at the Arava Institute that I did not mention, it's the capacity building and training and entrepreneurship courses that we implement for people not only from the region but also from the whole developing world.
Okay, well, I've certainly learned a lot. John Medved and Tareq Abu Hamed, thank you so much both for your time this evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day and good night, everybody.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.